I'm Tom Oberheim. I've been making synthesizers since 1975, on and off. My claim to fame is I had the first polyphonic synthesizer you could buy in a music store in 1975, 76. Analog was king in those days. Of course, that's all it was, pretty much. My history is I was a computer engineer in the 60s, designed 3 general purpose computers, did all kinds of computer stuff. Went to UCLA, physics major, but I spent all my time in the music department, met a lot of musicians after we all graduated in the mid-late 60s. Some of them came to me with requests for me to build them amps and various other things. And one person in a group that was never very popular came to me and said that the group had started up and went away and started up again, and this gal that was running the group came to me and said, build me a ring modulator, because the last group had a ring modulator. And I ring modulator, what's that? So I went up to the UCLA Engineering Library and I looked through books and I looked at the circuit of a ring modulator, and I looked, well, I have no idea how you use that in music. But then I found an obscure magazine article by a guy named Harold Boda, who was a close associate of Bob Moog, that explained how to use a ring modulator in music. And so I built a few. And in ways I still don't know how it happened, the word got around in Los Angeles, this is in 1969, that I had a ring modulator, and I got a phone call from a movie composer named Leonard Rosenman, who was doing a movie called Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and he wanted to use a ring modulator on it. So I gathered up a ring modulator and a piano mic and an amplifier and speaker, took it to 20th Century Fox and hooked it up. And at the break, some of the people in the orchestra came and said, can I buy one? And I thought, gee, maybe I should build a few. So in '69, I started building ring modulators and sold them under my own name for a while, and then sold them to a big Chicago musical instrument company, and I put the Maestro name because Maestro was just a name. And then got interested in trying to make a machine that would simulate Leslie speakers, and I was totally unsuccessful because I just didn't have enough experience to understand how Leslie speakers worked. But in doing that, I came across a thing called a phase shift circuit, and I put that together and had the first phase shifter on the market about 2 years ahead of the MXR. That was a Maestro phase shifter. With my 11 years of digital computer experience, I got the idea to build a digital sequencer. I did that in '72, '73. But I discovered a little problem with that idea is that in those days, most people had one synth. It's not like today. So if you recorded something into the DS2, or what's called a DS2 with your synthesizer, then you had a choice. You could either have the sequencer play the synthesizer, or you could play the synthesizer, but you couldn't do both. So I came up with this idea to come up with what I thought was the absolute minimum usable analog synthesizer, and I called it a synthesizer expander module. No plans to get in the heavy-duty, big-time synth business at all. But in January 1975, my phase shifter, filter, sample hold, ring modulator, effects business went away. And I very quickly decided to put together a bunch of SEMs with a scanning keyboard, which I licensed from EMU when they were 2 guys in a coffee pot, and showed the Oberheim 4 voice at the 1975 NAMM show. And I got comments like the owner of Manny's Music in New York saying, it's $4,000? There's nothing in the store over $800. Of course, yeah, those were in the days when a Les Paul was $800. So, but it it found some people that wanted it and used it. It was a beast to use because lots of pots and lots of switches. Originally I had no programmer. Later I put in a partial programmer. But then in the NAMM show at 1978, Dave Smith was there with the Prophet 5, and within a few months the 4-voice was on its way to oblivion. So I had to very quickly develop the OBX, and then we went on from there, OBX-A, OB8, Matrix 12, Expander, DMX, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then in 1985, it's a very long story. Basically, the bank that my company owed money to foreclosed on the company and shut it down and sold the name and the design at the time to a third party. Several years later, that third party sold it to Gibson. So Gibson actually owns the Oberheim name and the old Oberheim logo, which they did a little bit with years ago. They don't do much with it now. So then I kind of did a few things after that over the next 20 years or so. Consulting in Silicon Valley. I worked for a while at UC Berkeley and this and that, much to my wife's nervousness about finding work and making money for the family. Right, dear? Then I got an email in the early fall of 2008 from an organization called the Red Bull Music Academy. Had no idea what it was, but they were offering me a free trip to Barcelona to be interviewed at this thing that was called the Red Bull Music Academy, which is basically it's kind of a contest for people that do EDM. And so they have a contest and thousands of EDM types send in their music and whatever. They do this once a year, and the 50 people that they choose get to go to wherever they have their venue that year. It's in a big different city every year, all expenses paid, and they bring in industry veterans, and I was one of those. And so I got a free trip to Barcelona. I said, what the heck, free trip to Barcelona? What's wrong with that? And they asked me to bring along an Oberheim, so I took along one of my little synthesizer modules. I didn't want to carry my OB8 all the way to Barcelona. And I thought, okay, this is a relic, it's a museum piece. The average age of these people is about 24 years old. They weren't even born when the SCM came out. But after my interview by these Red Bull people, about 4 different guys came up, can I buy one? So I came home from Barcelona and thought about it for a while, talked to my wife, and decided, well, I'll build a few in the garage. And 3 or 4 a month, whatever. So in 3 years, I'd sold almost 1,000, and I could have, if I'd had a company building them, I could have sold more. So I thought, well, I guess I'm back in the business. So thank you very much. And I started getting these emails from all over the world. People said, your stuff is so great. I can't afford to buy it on eBay because it's too expensive. Are you going to make this? Are you going to make that? Are you going to make this or that? So I seriously got back into it. It's a labor of love. It's not a company where I have employees. It's just me and a close friend who's a software engineer with help from my wife. No employees, and just loving it. And the SCM, redo of the SCM was redoing or reintroducing an old Oberheim, and so I thought, oh, what should I do next? In the Oberheim days, my favorite synth was always a 2-voice because I'm not a keyboard player, but it's fun to play with because I conceived it as something that you could play one SCM on the keyboard, one SCM by a sequencer, or 2 voices from the sequencer, 2 voices from the keyboard. It's just kind of fun. And I think the thing that really pushed me along when a friend called me up and said, hey, there's a 2-voice that's sold on eBay for $9,000. I said, what? So I, a year and a half ago, said, okay, that's the next machine. And it's now in living color. The idea is the same idea as the original, except the original was in the pre-microprocessor days, so it's just an analog sequencer, 8 positions, 2 voices. You turn the knobs to get a melody, and you turn the knobs again to get another melody, and the first one's gone. What I decided to do on this one was store the knob positions in flash memory, so you can design a sequence in the knobs, and then you can store it in flash memory. And the other thing I decided to do is add some editing features, so you can design the sequence with the knobs, but then you can edit each step in the sequence to have a rest, or to have what we call ratcheting, which allows a single gate to be double, triple, or quadruple. I'm sorry, a sequence step to be double, triple, or quadruple gates. And it's pretty simple stuff, but it allows you to make sequences that are a little more than just, clock, clock, clock.